Welcome back to another episode of On the Break. Tonight we have the Devin and Don't Ever Talk to Me or My Son About Empty Stats Again, Booker edition. He's coming off a 40-point performance and a win against the last undefeated team in the league. Josh and Justin here to break down what's going on around the league. What's up, man?
What's going on, buddy? I'm excited to be chatting about some regular season basketball as we're about 6-7 games into the season.
Yeah, dude, it's super surprising for a lot of teams, too, the Phoenix Suns being number one.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the things that jumps out the most right out of the gate. But, yeah, I think that's definitely worth talking about, and I want to know what your thoughts on that is and a lot of other stuff. So I'm glad to be back. So I want to start off a couple of things. So the show's brought to everyone by Audible. We heard at the beginning. I know you got into a pretty good book on Audible yourself. Were you telling me you got into the Igoudala book?
Yeah, so I just finished it, and I finished it in like 2 days. It's what's flipping awesome about Audible is that like I didn't even have to be. I was just doing house chores. I didn't have to be sitting down reading, right? So, and I could listen to this actor that was acting this book out for me, and really made it come to life. But super good book. I definitely recommend it for anybody. Igoudala has a weird soft spot in my heart, and also a weird hard spot in my heart. Hard spot. I can't say that, but yep. you know what I mean, right?
I follow you.
Because he played at Arizona, and I'm a big Arizona basketball fan. My dad went to the University of Arizona. There's pictures of me in a onesie, Arizona basketball onesie, right? So I've been cheering for him my whole life. Loved him when he was at the Sixers. He was one of my favorite players. And I loved him when he first went to Golden State. And then as I slowly, being an OKC fan, slowly hated Golden State more and more, I didn't know what to do with this guy, especially like Steve Kerr too, dude. He was an Arizona all-time great, and I loved him. And I didn't know what to do with these two guys that were on a team that I absolutely hated. Like I hated them more than any other team in any sports. I'm an OU fan. I hated the Warriors, the 73-win Warriors that kicked Steven Adams in the crotch 3 times more than I hated Texas, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to pick up his autobiography and see what it was about. It's called The Sixth Man. Dude, it was fantastic. It sheds a lot of light into types of pressures that are on these players, what it looks like on a season to season, how he changes and how he prepares, and the types of mental stresses that go into being on a non-contender and then also go into being on a contender and what it looks like to try and prepare for that. It's super good.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think I'm going to read it at some point, or listen to it, I should say. I'm with you. It is much easier to listen to them. You can do it in pieces pretty quickly. It's pretty easy. But yeah, no, that's awesome. I like Igoudala a lot. I've always liked him. I have much less of a problem with the Warriors than you do. We've been down that road before. But I get it. And he was always that sixth man, dude. And do you remember when he was almost a Maverick?
Yeah, he talks about that. He talks about his choice coming off of because he was traded to Denver in an Andrew Bynum trade, right?
Holy,
he actually talks about it.
Dude, that Bynum trade just shows up everywhere.
I know. I forgot about all this stuff that happened, and reading through that, it was like, oh my gosh, he was traded in order to get Bynum. But what happened was he trashes Doug Collins and says that this dude's just a snake, right? And he goes through and he says that Doug Collins is texting him and saying, hey, I'm really excited about next year. Super excited about the type of team that we have. I think we're going to be able to compete. And he's talking and then Drew Holiday comes and they're at some show or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. No, they were watching Team USA, the women's soccer team, compete. And Drew Holiday comes, who's now his new teammate, comes into Iggy's box and says, hey, have you talked to coach recently? Or he says, hey, you getting traded? Are you getting traded, right? And Iggy's like, no, man, I was just talking to coach. Like, look at the text messages. And then Drew Holiday takes out his phone and says, I was talking to coach too. And he just said, we're getting Bynum. And Iggy knew that he had to be traded in order for the salaries to match up, right?
Yeah.
So he was traded to Denver. Denver wanted him to come back, and he was an unrestricted free agent. They were asking him to come back. And he went and met with the Mavs, the Warriors, and there was another team. I can't remember what the other team was. Denver, obviously, and then another team. But he ended up picking the Warriors because he loved Clay and Steph. And he wanted to play for Mark Jackson. He wanted to play for a black coach.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
It seems to be that's sort of a general theme in that book for sure. I would be very interested to put like Bynum's career up against like Andrew Wiggins, for example, and see who's better, because I mean they were kind of a different position, but still, like, I don't know. I look at look at that and I just that's synonymous, like whatever you think about how that Igoudala thing went down. And so I don't know, it's just kind of an interesting comparison that I was looking into real quick while you were mentioning that. But yeah, there's a very interesting part of Igoudala's career that's talked about, like that's used to call out like systemic racism and stuff like that, and especially in a predominantly black league. It's really, really interesting to hear his unfiltered thoughts in this things from what I've heard about kind of what you were kind of alluding to the same thing.
Yeah, and that's actually I like that comparison between Bynum and Wiggins, because these two were both high draft picks. Bynum was supposed to be the next Shaq. Right. And Wiggins was supposed to be the next Kobe. So yeah, I've never thought about that. But yeah, at one point, so it's really weird because like in the book, and I don't know if this is just me going, okay, he moved to the Warriors, it's not now time for me to hate him, like in my subconscious or anything, right?
Sure.
But there's almost like a villain switch that kicks on whenever he goes to the Warriors, and not in their first season, but in their second season. And he starts making a lot of excuses for the way that Kevin Durant behaved or the way that Draymond Green behaved. At one point he said, I've never seen Steph lose his cool ever. And I remember Steph throwing a mouthpiece at two different refs.
Yeah, you know? That's true.
So it was like, but it's really neat to see the types of perceptions that a lot of these players honestly have. And that like, so what you're referring to is Igoudala comes out and says there was a reporter that asked him why he didn't want to, or why he wasn't playing the next night. And he came out and he said, I just do what Massa tells me. Right. And then he threw in dropped a couple of M-bombs and things like that. And it was a really big deal. He was fined $10,000 for it. And I think he was probably fined for putting it in this book as well, but I'm not sure about that because he did mention I'll probably get fined for putting this in, for printing this. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the book talks about how you're constantly, as a young black man, you're constantly playing for these white coaches and you're playing with these white refs on the floor that, like, the big reason why he said that was because there was this one ref that was getting on Kevin Durant the entire game and was calling bad fouls against him. Mm-hmm. And then Kevin tried to talk to him and he was like, don't even look at me. And Igoudala felt that was extremely out of line and that refs do that to him all the time.
Yeah.
So there's these undertones of how these young black men grow up in a situation where they have to beat the odds. You know, you come from the inner city and a lot of what you do is a product of the systemic racism that comes from public education systems. He tells a story of whenever he was, because he was an honor student, he walked into an honor student class, and the teacher goes, "I think you're in the wrong spot." And he says, "No, this is me." And he goes and sits down, and the teacher continues to argue with him and continues to say, "No, you're in the wrong spot. Let me see your transcript or your schedule," and finds out, and then just leaves him alone and doesn't talk to him anymore.
Naturally, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So,
hell of a book it sounds like, though.
Yeah, dude, it's super good, but ultimately, like, it reminds me that not everybody grows up with the same experience that I had, right?
Naturally,
people are different, and we've talked about this before with political stuff. After the NBA China stuff comes out, I want to read these books to try and understand at least how they feel.
Yeah.
You know, all of my feelings might not be rooted in fact in the same way that all of Igoudala's might not be rooted in fact. Some of them may be. Some of my feelings may be rooted in fact, you know, but I at least want to understand how they can feel so I can identify with more people and know more people, you know.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that a lot of his feelings are rooted in fact, and a lot of mine are. Not everything, but I at least want to understand people, you know?
Yeah, and we can't pretend to know what it's like or, you know, or even begin to understand how that feels or anything like that. But I think it's really interesting to try to understand both sides of the coin at all points in time and really try to seek to understand where someone else may come from. It's kind of a sense of being enlightened, but also, you know, being open-minded and really trying to really, you can't put yourself in those shoes, but, you know, try to at least understand what it might feel like if you did. So very interesting. I'll get into that for sure. I'll get back to you on what I think about it. I'm excited. So there's been something that's been making the media around, speaking of refs and all that stuff, and that's this new Tim Donaghy movie. Have you heard about this?
Dude, no, tell me about it.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, Tim Donaghy was an NBA ref who got busted for basically, in 2007, he got busted for gambling on NBA games.
He was shaving points, right?
He was shaving points, more or less, yeah. And it's the worst. I don't necessarily want to painted as if I don't know, like it gets really complicated with the wording of what he was charged with versus what actually happened and all that, right? And so this movie's called Inside Game. It came out this past Friday, and so he's been kind of making the media rounds, talking a lot about it and just kind of what it's like to make the movie and all that kind of stuff. I feel like we have to go see this.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, it's a really interesting story. He's pretty much, I mean, he's talked, pretty openly about how, I mean, rightfully so, he takes responsibility for it. He's like, I'm obviously banned from anything NBA, and the league has basically cut off all connection from me, and he's like, and I get that, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what his side of the story is on this. It's kind of hard to really take what he says with a grain of salt. I mean, you have to take it with a grain of salt. It's kind of hard to take seriously what he says because, I mean, he lied about it. And gambled,
and it's so interesting. There is not a transgression that happens in Major League Sports that is worse than gambling and the perception of saving points. Mm-hmm. Dude, honestly, this book is so good now that I'm coming back to it. Iggy talks about the purity of the game and how the game isn't pure. It's all about money, right?
It's always about money.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll get Kevin Durant gets this, hey, you're going to the wrong place, and you're destroying the purity of the game because you're just teaming up with all these other superstars, which I've said,
sure.
But at the end of the day, it's not about them going out and playing basketball and loving the sport. It's about them going out and making billions upon billions upon billions of dollars for these owners, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. That's all it is. If you're curious as to why something is happening, like in sports, but also in life generally, follow the money.
Follow the money, yeah.
You'll always find it. I'm a big proponent of that, and it's almost always led me back to a reasonable explanation as to why X, Y, Z is happening. Mm-hmm. And so this Donaghy thing's pretty interesting. I don't want to give a ton of pub to it because I think it's worth going out and seeing, but it's hard to understand how to feel about it because you're right. There is nothing worse in sports than someone who cheats, and that really and truly comes down to the integrity of the sport and not taking that seriously or not taking that for what it's worth. Like, you're in a spot, and Donaghy talks about this a lot. Like, he was in a spot where he was very grateful to do the job that he did. He refed some iconic games. He talks about Malice at the Palace. He talks about some of those finals games with the Lakers and stuff like that in the 2000s. Like, really interesting guy to have been present on, like, to have your feet on that hardwood is a privilege, especially in basketball specifically here.
You have to be talented regardless of who you are.
Exactly. No matter what your job is. I mean, I don't care if you're an assistant wiping up the sweat off the floor, you're there for a reason. And when it all comes down to the integrity of the game. And it's really hard for me to respect someone that doesn't uphold that at all points in time. I've had my own transgressions with my own teams about things like that at times, and that's shitty. But at the end of the day, like, it is all about making money, and some people don't take that as seriously as they should either.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, man, it's been in it. We'll kind of get into some actual basketball now. I think those are some of the media things we're talking about that are kind of going around. We're checking out, trying to give a few recommendations where we can. So I guess do you want to dive in? Just kind of bounce around and talk about what you want to talk about. What do you think first?
Yeah, I think so. We have a theme on this show of Lakers, right? And we have a theme on this show of Mavericks because, dude, I think those are two of the most exciting teams in the league. And also, we're all from Dallas, and I grew up watching the Lakers. I grew up just worshiping Kobe, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we got to talk about that game.
I think
you were at that game.
Yeah, I was. So let's definitely get into it. Back up for just a second. I didn't realize you were a Kobe worshiper as much as all that.
Dude, I'm a big-time Kobe worshiper. Wow, okay. Kobe and Gilbert Arenas were my jam in high school.
I love that you bring up Gilbert Arenas.
Dude, I love Gilbert.
I went to this game. This was Friday night, and so did you watch this whole game, first of all?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts of this game?
So first off, whenever you start doing this in front of hundreds of people, you start creeping towards that. I really want to be right, so I'm gonna cheer for this team.
Yep. 100%. Yeah.
I was saying all summer, dude, this Lakers team is gonna be good. I don't care what anybody says. This Lakers team is gonna be really flipping good.
Yeah.
So the whole time, the Mavericks led through three quarters, and I was like, God, they cannot lose to the flipping Mavericks. This team is young, So yeah. I'm even though Mavericks are kind of my team. OKC is my number one team.
Always, yeah.
Moving to Dallas, trying to like the Mavericks a little bit more.
Sure.
I enjoy watching the Lakers. I enjoy watching the Bucks a lot. But I'm not gonna like if OKC plays any of them.
Yeah, of course. It's like me and the Celtics. Same kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sitting here watching it and going and looking at how the Mavericks are beating the Lakers through the first three quarters, which, dude, all of it's just Luka. Luka had one of the best quarters I've ever seen in the third quarter, dude.
Absolutely.
He looked MVP caliber. He looked like if I had to watch one quarter and give out an MVP, Luka's in that conversation. That was one of the best quarters I've ever seen from anybody.
Definitely.
Especially this year.
Yeah.
Because it was like he was doing just veteran plays where there was one play where he ran 2 high pick and rolls in a row. One was and he's so good at when he takes the pick and roll, if you watch him, because he's not super fast and can't explode off that pick like a Russell Westbrook or even like a James Harden or like a Kyrie, they can just explode to the rim and be at the rim immediately.
Yeah.
He shoves somebody on his back and puts his butt back into him, and he has Avery Bradley on him. 2 pick and rolls in a row. Has Avery Bradley, shoves him in the back into him, and hesitates. One play had Anthony Davis, and the second one had Dwight Howard. Both times, whenever he shoves back and he puts his butt back into Avery Bradley, it's at between the free throw line, probably about the college or high school free throw line, right? Mm-hmm. So right at the top of the key, but not quite to the 3-point line. Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis, who are both playing out of their minds, by the way, have to pause and hesitate, and that gives Kristaps time to roll to the rim, right? And he gets behind those 2 guys. One time he throws a lob, and LeBron James is just
there,
unbelievable, and goes over and stops the lob from happening, right?
He's LeBron James. I mean,
yeah, exactly. So the next time, and you can't that's like him and Draymond Green and maybe AD, like a handful of other people are actually going to make that read, right?
Right.
So he runs that the first time. The next time, it's Danny Green sitting there, and he sees Danny Green already leaning towards the middle, and he whips a one-handed pass over to who was the shooter? It might have been Jalen Brunson. It was somebody.
Or Delon Wright, one of the two.
Do what?
It might have been Delon Wright as well.
It might have been Delon Wright. Yeah. Whips a pass over to them, one-handed pass in the shooter's pocket, and the guy drills a 3. And it was like he set that up starting previously, you know?
He set up like 3 options right there.
Yeah, exactly. And he's just making all these reads. He's making middle of the lane dump off passes. So we actually texted. Give me just one moment. Sorry, we actually texted and said, you said, I don't think that he's shooting well enough. And Kyle kind of jumped on that and disagreed and said, hey, I disagree. That was a great game. And I knew where you were coming from because you look at the stat line. He shot 44% from the field.
Yep.
That's not great for today's day and age. But the dude shot 5 for 11 from the 3-point line, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he was
13 assists.
10 of 23 overall. Like that's. Yeah. And my point there was that, so yeah, I mean, it was 44%. That's fine. And that's slightly better than, I think he shot 42% on the year last year. So it's still better. But I think the problem isn't necessarily with Luka, but it's the team around him where he's your number one shooter. You got to be a little better than that.
I watch Luka and I go, this guy's going to develop into a 50-40-90 guy.
Definitely.
And it's hard for me, and I knew exactly where you're coming from because as soon as you said it, I felt the same way. I was like, he didn't shoot well enough. And then I went and looked at the stats, but it's hard for me to not judge him against what I think he's going to be, which is this 50-40-90 guy.
Right. Absolutely. So for me, this game was, dude, so everybody has been, so this is going to come with a Lakers take, but I guess that just makes sense. But everybody is like freaking out that the Lakers are 5-1 right now. And if you look at that schedule, they're not against great teams so far. One was against Memphis, one was against Charlotte, there was one other bad team in there. And then there was one against the Suns that was a win. And then, no, it wasn't against the Suns. It was...
They have the Suns next week.
That's what it is, right. But regardless...
Spurs, Hornets, Jazz. The Jazz was a big one.
The Jazz was a big one.
The Jazz.
Absolutely. And the Spurs was a good win too. But what I saw on Friday night was a young and upcoming team that's Luka, Kristaps, and insert big name free agent next year probably is a big 3 type situation is my guess. but a young and up and coming team that's trying to figure it out that the Lakers struggled to beat. Now, when it came to crunch time, if Dallas could have made their throws, which they missed a lot of free throws in this game, and I saw actually today that Carlisle canceled 3-point contests and everything today during practice, and they only shot free throws.
Dude, good for him.
Absolutely, he needs to, because you're professional basketball players. You need to be making your throws. And I think it was Dwight Powell that missed that final throw that would have put him up 4 instead of 3. Danny Green got the ball in the corner. There was an obvious
that play, by the way.
Yeah, there was an obvious foul by Dwight Howard, but they didn't call it. They caught it in the last 2 minutes report. But they brought that game to tie it, and then you knew it was over. You knew that the Mavericks were going to lose that game because you've got Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and it's one of those things where this was not an impressive win for the Lakers, and people think that it is, but that's not impressive. Like, this is a young and upcoming team. This is a team that won 27 games last year. Now, granted, it's a completely different team with KP, and it's definitely restructured around a lot of things. A lot of free agency stuff happened. All of that, but at the end of the day, that's not an impressive win. And I'm not ready to anoint this Lakers team as the greatest fucking team of all time, like a lot of people are running out to pour Kool-Aid all over them for some reason, or Gatorade.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from in regards to the team that they're playing. Anytime that you're down big in the hole and you can come back on somebody else's home court, I think it's a big deal. And especially for a team that we saw a lot of LeBron James rolling over last year, and whether was on the court, I didn't see as much of him rolling over on the court as a lot of people seem to think there was. I saw a lot of him rolling over, and if they're in the playoff race, there's no way he's shutting down for the last month of the season, right?
No, definitely not.
So I saw some of that, and it's easy to go into a team, an away game, and say, this team should not be as good as us. They're beating us off the floor. I'm just going to roll over. Like, it's enough. I was impressed by that. The other thing that I'm impressed by is, one, the Lakers are third in plus-minus differential, behind only, and this first one I think is probably a fluke, but the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks, and then the Lakers. And then after that is the Suns. So middle of the season, if this is the middle of the season, I'm going, all of these teams are for real.
Yeah.
Because plus minus like that means that you're blowing teams out. And if you look at their schedule, the Lakers' schedule, so first game of the season was Clippers, lost to the Clippers by 10.
That's a fine loss.
I'm all right with that. Right. Next game was against the Jazz, beat them by 9. Next game was against the Hornets, beat them by 20. Next game was against the Grizzlies, beat them by 30. Then the Mavericks beat them by 9. Spurs beat them by about 7.
Yeah.
So, and that was at the Spurs. That plus minus is a big deal for me.
Yeah, you're bigger on it than me and Kyle are. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm pretty big on how well or how badly you're beating teams.
Right.
I'm pretty big on that.
The other thing about them is though that I just everything is all fine and well right now, but as soon as I texted you this during the game, I think that Jason Kidd's just dying to get out there and coach this team.
Yeah, you said that, and I do have concerns overall over what's going to happen over the entire year. But to be at this point, I don't yet know if they just all completely mesh so well. Dude, Dwight Howard is playing out of his mind. JaVale McGee is playing out of his mind. They're both playing really great. Dwight Howard is averaging a better block percentage than he did in his 3 years as Defensive Player of the Year.
I agree with you.
That's crazy.
And that is nuts. He's playing a different style of ball. He's dropped like 40 pounds, so that helps.
Yeah, he's Dennis Rodman out there. He doesn't care about scoring. He's just getting put back dunks and blocking shots and playing defense.
Yeah, that's fair.
Guarding guards on the perimeter, like he's doing exactly what they want him to do. These guys I don't know if they still have another gear to kick it to, or if they just matched perfectly from the beat. Either way, it's impressive to me.
But let me tell you something, man. JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard are not going to stay healthy for the entire season. And so when you start getting down to your depth, that's where this thing is going to get really interesting. And like Danny Green, like all these guys they should be this good because they're all like 80 years old. They're all veterans. And like you don't have a whole lot of young Kyle Kuzmas on this team because you laughed them out of town basically. And that's where I think this is going to get really interesting is whenever they start struggling with those pieces around them. And, I'm always going to be somewhat of a Lakers doubter no matter what, but it wouldn't matter what this team is. I'd be doubting it regardless. And I'm not saying that I just don't know yet. I think that's the biggest caveat here is we're 6-7 games into this season. There's nothing to really note yet, but it's an interesting start. That's for sure.
I have part of me, like, I loved the Frank Vogel hire whenever it happened. I was like, I think that's better than them than getting Ty Lue. And part of me really loves what he's doing. I had a concern whenever on that last play of the game, whenever they got the ball or to LeBron James at the top. That's a hammer play. The Spurs made a lot of money running that play. What happens is off the inbounds play, you have your ball handler come up and pick up a screen, and he catches the ball and then turns around and comes off that screen and he rolls down towards the rim. What it's designed to do is have somebody that's playing help defense, because the guy with the ball handler is already beating his man because he picked up a screen at the top. Everything's overloaded to the other side of the court except for the guy with the ball handler and the picker, right? What it's designed to do is that guy comes free and goes at the rim, and then the guy on the other side of the court, you've got a shooter that's at free throw line extended, and you have a big man who goes up and sets a screen on the shooter who's free throw line extended about when the guy that's dribbling hits the block or maybe a little bit further out. So that's Dwight Howard, and that's where we saw the egregious grab, right? He's supposed to set a screen on Danny Green. Danny Green drops down. Maxi Kleber, that play is designed to get him to come over. But what should have been happening is Rick Carlisle should have said, I don't care if LeBron James goes and dunks the ball. Don't rotate on that. You're supposed to stick it to everybody on the perimeter and not let any threes happen. That play is designed to get somebody rotating to stop the dunk, stop the 2-point play so that it can get a 3-point play. It was a weird call by Frank Vogel. When I saw it start to develop, I was like, this must be something different in the split second, but it turned out to be the hammer play. And it was a weird play call by Frank Vogel, and it ended up working. Dwight Howard's time was off. He arrived at the screen too early, and that's why he had to hold. But it was a weird play call, and I don't trust that play call and that decision in that moment, which gives me concerns about Frank Vogel. Does that all make sense? That was a lot.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I don't know the X's and O's quite as well as you do, but it makes sense. And I mean, I get what you mean whenever you're looking at like a play where it's like that is not what was supposed to really happen there. It's one of those things they got away with it because of the talent they have on the court, and that's, I mean, Danny Green, dude. Danny Green's not that guy usually.
Dude, he knocks down some 3-point shots. I think they got away with it because of Carlisle or Kleba. I don't know if Carlisle actually told him in the huddle, but one of the two made a mistake on you let LeBron James take that dunk. Like, that's designed. It'd be like this. It's like we know we're gonna not tie on a 2, but I'm gonna drop a play that's gonna fake like we're going for the 2, and they're gonna bite on it. It just didn't make sense for Vogel to call that play.
I mean, the other curious thing is, why didn't they just foul him?
Yeah.
Like, that's the obvious play to me. Why not just foul him? Why let it go? But this is a young team, man, and Carlisle's gonna let that stuff play out so he can teach them a lesson. That's gonna happen.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I had concerns about both coaches in that situation, both Vogel and I was like, why is Carlisle not telling him I don't care if he dunks or not?
I'm not too concerned about Rick Carlisle in that kind of situation, because that's not what he would have usually set up. But those are young mistakes that you're going to see.
Yeah, that's
for
fair.
sure. So okay, well we'll get that's interesting. 2 teams so far. I mean, the Mavericks beat Denver the other night. I mean, they turned around off of this Lakers loss, which really and truly should have been a win for them, and beat the living piss out of the Cavs, which doesn't make sense. But I mean, good teams beat bad teams, so like that's what's expected of them. And Luka went for a triple-double again. I mean, that kid is incredible.
Awesome.
He has instinct like I've never seen before.
Yeah, he's playing unbelievable. Like he might be one of the best passers in the league right now. Like, him or LeBron are both up there. Ben Simmons is up there for me. Somebody else that I'm thinking of, and I'll think of it later. But he's Lonzo Ball. Duh. He's a top 10 passer in the league for me right now. James Harden's up there. Russell Westbrook's up there.
Definitely. Well, let's go to the Suns. Where's your head at on the Suns so far?
Dude, I don't know if this is for real or not. They just beat the Sixers without DeAndre Ayton. Granted, the Sixers didn't have Joel Embiid.
Right.
But they're playing without DeAndre Ayton right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's making him better. Ayton's a defensive minus. I'm not going to say a liability. He's a defensive minus, but he's a huge offensive plus. Devin Booker's playing out of his mind.
Yeah.
And the types of minutes that they're getting from Kelly Oubre, who's playing really good defense. Ricky Rubio, last year they were 29th in turnover ratio. This year I think that they're 16th, and that's 100% Ricky Rubio coming in and being able to play true point and allowing Devin Booker to move to the small forward or the shooting guard position.
You knew what you were going to get whenever you signed Ricky Rubio. That's for sure. It just so I think my take on them is 100% agree with what you just said. Like and I also think that it's Monty Williams understanding how the pieces fit together, and that's the
plans.
Yeah,
really
Igor, I don't think was good with that at all. I don't think he was good with much, unfortunately. Those Spurs assistants, sometimes they just don't really. It's very similar to Doc Rivers' assistants. Like it just they don't really always come of. I mean, look at Thibodeau, for God's sakes, like a great defensive mind, but just can't make that happen. They gave him way longer than they ever should have, and then another shot for some reason. But I think what's confusing about the Suns and why it makes us kind of be like, are they for real, is because they've had so much disorganization or organizational dysfunction, in the past. And Robert Sarver is a terrible owner, and it goes on and on and on. And I don't honestly think that you get over Robert Sarver being. I'm such a believer in top-down approach when it comes to this stuff, and like it's exactly what we talk about with James Dolan all the time. The Knicks are fucking terrible because they have a systemic problem that starts at the top and goes all the way down. Robert Sarver's the same way. They've had tons of talent for a couple of years now. They did nothing with Tyson Chandler. They did nothing even going back to like Steve Nash. Like they've never been able to put these things together. And so I think
Steve Nash took a pay cut and then traded away all of his assets.
Right. What an asshole move to do.
Yeah, that was horrible.
I mean, he told Matt Barnes to not talk to his fucking fans. Like, get the hell out of here. I'm so glad Matt Barnes threatened him. But anyway, like, I think that's why this is really confusing, because everybody wants to be like, yeah, this team's for real, but like, how can you buy into the dysfunction that usually plagues this organization? And I mean, at the end of the day, like, they're just one of those organizations that you feel like are going to come back down to earth, and I would not be surprised to see that. But to your point, they're playing great without DeAndre Ayton, and I'm not saying this is a Ewing effect type situation where, the plus is minus by any stretch of the imagination, because I mean, I love DeAndre. I thought that taking DeAndre Ayton over Luka was still the right play. I don't know about that now. But at the time it felt like that made a lot of sense, and I probably would have done the same thing if I were Phoenix. It's not like they needed Luka Doncic,
Yeah, you can't look at the guy that's supposed to be Hakeem Olajuwon 2.0 and pass on him. Right?
Exactly. You can't. You just can't.
Nobody, like, it's the Jordan Hakeem thing. Nobody blames the Rockets for taking Hakeem over Jordan.
Right.
You never hear anybody complain about that. It's the same thing.
It's a wild thing. So I do kind of expect them to come back down to earth at some point, but they've had some pretty impressive wins overall, man.
They're fourth in plus minus in the league, so they're beating the crap out of teams. They're second in the league in assists. They're the Warriors. They're playing like the Warriors, not as good defensively, but anytime that you can get a team that's second in the league in assists and beating teams, like that's a big deal, especially when you have a superstar that has the ability to drop 70, right?
Very true. I just struggle to know what to do with Kelly Oubre. I really do. Like I want to defend him because I like him a lot, but he just hasn't really gotten it together yet. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues.
I've always liked him. I can't remember, was he picked high? He came out of Kansas. I know that going into Kansas, he was supposed to be a consensus top 5 pick, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He came out of Kansas and was picked. Yeah, no, that's not right. I can't remember where he was picked, but he was supposed to be a consensus top 5 pick, and he never really panned out that way. And I, for instance, had to lower my expectations of what he should be. And when I lowered my expectations, I was like, this is a really nice player. Like, he's just a guy that goes out and plays hard-nosed defense, knocks down a three. He's an energy guy. Like, that's what you want from a rotation wing player,
Yeah, he was in the 2015 draft, round 1, 15th pick overall.
Yeah, he was supposed to be a top 5 player coming out of high school. For
sure. Yeah, so I'll be interested to continue to watch them. Did you happen to see Porter's first game the other night? in Denver?
No. Tell me
Yeah,
about that.
dude, Michael Porter Jr. looked great.
Did he?
Yeah, he looked like he moves with absolute ease, and I mean, more to come because they're obviously slow playing his minutes and everything, given that he spent an entire year injured. But that's going to be a big asset for that Nuggets team. The only thing is, they're going to have to figure out exactly how he's going to have to develop the chemistry with Jokic, and they haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing. It comes with time.
The good news is if you can develop chemistry with anybody, it's a guy who can hit you in the shooter's pocket anywhere on the court at any given time,
Right, exactly.
So, yeah. Speaking of another guy that was supposed to be a number one, that guy was supposed to be picked over Ayton.
Yeah. No, I know it. But I mean, he fell to like 15, like middle of the draft, like outside the top
14.
10. 14, yeah.
Just at the edge of the lottery.
And that is, I mean, that's a significant fall, but I mean, that injury he had was nothing to joke with, I mean, it was definitely felt like it was pretty for real, man. So, I mean, it's a back fracture basically.
Yeah, for real. And like, if you remember watching the draft, dude, he looks like he couldn't get to the stage. I was like, that guy's never going to play again.
No, never. Yeah. It definitely looked that way.
Yeah. So I'm really glad that he's coming back. It was like a broken vertebrae or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, man.
But whenever you're worried with the spine, whenever you're worried about a back injury, dude, I hope that they ease him in, and I hope they go, we can play without you. If we need to play without you for another year, we'll do it. I just want to care about your safety.
Absolutely.
Which Igoudala would say that they'll never say, right?
Naturally, yeah.
Yeah. But
that's an organizational thing, and I think that they understand the importance of slow playing something like that. At least I hope they do.
Dude, I would. Like, ultimately, like, you're going to win this year. You may not win a championship, but you got Jokic locked up. You got Jamal Murray locked up. Like, you have a future, right? Why not slow play this guy that could turn into a superstar? Slow play him, even if he doesn't have to play more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes a game. Just make sure that he doesn't get hurt and end his career,
Absolutely. 100%. And there's no need to, continue to push that whenever you don't really have to. And I think that's really probably the biggest point there is just that you can't. There's no reason to push it. There's just not. Like, you've got a potential superstar, and this guy is absolutely incredible. Just keep the wheels on it, I think, is the biggest thing there.
The old Nuggets have been wishy-washy for me. Not as good as I thought they would be. Like, this is their schedule. Magic won against Magic, lost to the Pelicans by more than 15 actually. Lost to the Mavericks in a close game by 3. Beat the Kings, beat the Suns, beat the Trailblazers.
Yeah.
Pretty underwhelming, dude. That's a pretty underwhelming schedule. That's one team that we expected to be a playoff team there. Lost to the Pelicans and the Mavs.
Yeah. Again, I think it's hard to understand what the Mavericks are yet, and I think I think a lot of people are sleeping on them, though.
The Mavericks are way better than I thought they would be.
Yeah, this early on.
I had them making the playoffs. Now, I had the Warriors making the playoffs in like the 7-8 seed, and I had them going deep too. Not happening this year. Not after the Steph Curry broken hand thing.
Yeah, man, that's an ugly, ugly wagon. And I mean, I love that there was all those reports that came out a couple weeks ago that were like, oh, well, we're going to get Clay back in March, and and then he's going to be back just in time for the playoff run. The first time they asked Steve Kerr about that, he was like, yeah, that's not happening.
yeah, good for him, dude.
Absolutely, just put that to rest.
Learn from your mistakes. Like, it was obvious that you rolled out Kevin Durant when you shouldn't have. Learn from your mistakes. Like, if nobody else gives you credit for that, Steve Kerr, I'll give you credit for that. Learn from your mistakes there.
Do you think though that Kevin Durant, like, away from all this, he chose to go? Like, he could have stopped it, right?
In a vacuum, yes. There's something fishy going on with what happened with Bob Myers. You remember that. He fake cried in an interview talking about Kevin Durant. And then they asked Steve Kerr about whether or not Kevin Durant was ready to go. And Steve said, ask Bob Myers. So there's something fishy going on there. And Kevin Durant hasn't come out and say it yet. He's come out and said a lot of things about the Warriors organization. For instance, he came out and said that Draymond was a big reason why he left. And the fight with Draymond was a big reason why he left.
Yeah.
But he hasn't come out and said that he was forced back, which Credit to him if it was, credit to the Warriors if he wasn't. But man, there's something fishy going on. I just don't trust it completely.
I agree with that, but I also don't trust the notion that an organization just made a guy go out there and play. Like if a guy can't go, a guy can't go. And like there's nobody that's more in tune with how their body feels than someone like Kevin Durant. And I mean, you got to at least somewhat make the choice to go. Like, I mean, just as a normal human being, if I'm the coach, I'm saying, Josh, go, and you're saying, dude, I can't, I won't, I'm not potentially ending my career over this. Then I don't know. It's kind of on the player too to say, no, I'm not going.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look at what Kawhi did. Yeah. Kawhi did it, for an entire year, and he was booed out of that city, and he went and won a championship just to show those guys.
Fucking awesome.
But I think, dude, Kevin, like even in Iggy's book, he talks about the things that he has to talk and speak into people. One of the things that would piss him off about Kevin Durant is that he cared too much about what other people thought of him.
Well, we know that to be true.
Yeah, and we know that for a fact. Look at him fighting with 11-year-old Twitter trolls,
It's my favorite.
And I think that it would not be hard for Bob Myers to convince Kevin Durant, hey, our guys are saying you should go. Do you want everybody to think that you just let your team down if you don't go in return? Like, I think that it wouldn't be hard for that to convince him of that, Yeah.
And
especially dude, anybody, like, say what you will, anybody that's in that high as a GM or head of basketball operations, they can play people. They know what strings to pull, And I can imagine it very vividly. I don't know if it happened. This is all speculation. You and I will probably never know if it happened unless Katie comes out and says something. But I can just see it. I can see it, and it's very vivid. I disagree with that, though, at least as far as, like, I mean, I could see how that could be the case, but I think it would be really hard, even if, say, Kevin Durant came out and wrote the book that Igoudala just wrote, right? I think it would be really hard to take all of that full-heartedly seriously because he's such a whiner. Like, he really is. And, like, I hate to say that about him because I fucking love Kevin Durant, man. But, like, he really is. Like, I mean, you have burner accounts on Twitter and Instagram to make yourself feel better. Like, come on, bro. Like, you get paid millions of dollars to ignore that shit. People are dumb. People are stupid. Most people don't know what they're talking about, and most people won't back their shit up. So just, just take that for what it is. You got to be smarter than that. And so, I don't know. I don't know that even if he did come out and tell us, I don't know that I would necessarily believe it all. Because, I mean, and again, that's fair.
It's one person's point of view, which could be very different from, Bob Myers' point of view. So we'll never really know what happened. But I don't know. I've thought a lot about that still, and I just, for some reason, I can't really shake, like, that the best dynasty team of all time would just let a guy go out there absolutely butchered and, and risk his whole career. I don't know. I get what you're saying. I could see it happening, but I also have a hard time believing in a vacuum that would happen. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Iggy claimed that their doctors cleared him with a broken leg.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, they'll clear you for it. I mean, dude, you can get a doctor to tell you anything.
Yeah. So I do think there's a difference between these team doctors saying, yeah, you're clear to play, Kevin, and then Bob Myers going, you better get your ass out of there. I'll make sure you never play in the league again.
Yeah.
I do think there's a difference between that. And I don't think that the latter happened, but I think that he was probably cleared. Yeah. And that because of that, he went out and played.
Boy, they've got in the next collective bargaining agreement, they have got to work out some independent doctor type situation or whatever. They've got to.
I agree 100%. And there should be more guaranteed money.
Yeah. We'll get into some of the CBA stuff as we get closer to it, but that's definitely something that needs to get into. Well, what is your take on where well, I don't want to stay in the West for the whole episode. Touch on it real quick. Where's your head at with the Rockets? Not a great start, I'll tell you that.
You can't put two black holes in the same floor and go, you guys are going to go well,
Yeah.
They have moments where you go, how the heck are you going to stop this team? And then they have moments where you go, this team is going to stop themselves, like.
Yeah, 100%. I'm so confused by them.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't remember who they were playing, but there was, let me look up their schedule because I'll see it and I'll remember who they were playing. But like there was one play where there was like a 3 possession. One was fast break, James Harden dumped it to Russell Westbrook and he just jammed on everybody. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I saw the highlights of it. I don't think I watched the actual game, though.
Yeah, and it was like then Russell Westbrook got a steal and they were just going back and forth. It was Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
It was Milwaukee. It was the first game of the season. And I really thought that they were going to beat Milwaukee and be like the big dog. Milwaukee ended up coming back. Giannis fouled out and Chris Middleton drained like 2 threes in a row. But there were flashes in that game. Westbrook had 16 points or 16 rebounds. Harden had 14 assists and Westbrook finished with 24 points. Like there were flashes in that game where I was going, this team could be unbeatable if they put it together. And to his credit, Russell's not ball hogging. I think he's really deferring to James Harden. Mm-hmm. He's still only shooting 25% from the 3-point line. Shooting 21 points per game, 9 assists. I would like to see that number down a little bit because it makes me think that he's still kind of hunting assists a little.
Yeah.
But he's not doing his triple double at all cost.
Yeah, that's very true. It'll be interesting to watch. Well, let's move to the East a little bit, kind of dabble around some of these teams. Is the Heat for real?
They have the best rookie on the floor.
They sure do, man.
Chris, is his name Chris Nunn?
I think so, yeah.
Chris Dunn.
Yeah, not Chris Dunn.
Yeah. Nunn's playing out of his mind. He's going to win Rookie of the Year. If John doesn't come back, it's almost a lock for that guy. Like he had I think he was averaging 22 points a game.
Yes, Kendrick Nunn, by the way.
Kendrick Nunn. For a little bit, he was he's averaging 19.5 points a game. He's shooting 48% from the field, 44% from the 3-point line, dude. These rookies, this was supposed to be a bad draft class, and they're all playing out of their mind. Jaw's playing out of his mind. Rui Hachimura is a dark horse for Rookie of the Year. I'm impressed with all of them, man.
I mean, so
Tyler Hero, they've got 2 rookies that are top 5 rookies.
And all of this has been without Jimmy Butler, which is astounding. Which
might be what's happening.
I mean, it could be a Ewing type situation. I don't know, but
Jimmy Butler is the ultimate Ewing player. He's a great defender and he's super clutch, but I've always he's been underwhelming for me.
Yeah, especially with as much shit as he talks.
Yeah, dude.
He talks a lot of garbage, man. He does. Really does.
This guy, for me, he can't be the best player on a for sure a championship team. Yeah. He can't be the best player on a 2. He can't. I don't think if he's the best player on the team, I don't think he'll ever make it out of the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, especially with. I mean, the Magic have kind of stunk to start off, but I think they're a significantly better team than they are.
Yeah, and this guy can't play with other people.
Right.
He's kind of proved it. He doesn't want to play with other people.
It's weird though because when he got to Philly, he really settled down. And it's all very confusing. But none of his exits have been graceful. That's for sure.
Yeah, he made Tobias Harris worse in Philly.
Definitely.
Tobias Harris has been playing really well. Like, I don't care what his numbers are. He's watching him on the court. He's played really well. He's been pretty efficient this year. And he looks a lot more comfortable. He's getting more of his shots that he wants. He made Tobias Harris worse. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more Jimmy Butler defense. Just carry our load defensively. I want you to shut down the other guy, and we're the best defensive team in the league. And let Tobias get his a little bit more. But Jimmy wasn't about that,
Yeah, and I mean, that he was always a little bit of an odd fit for the Sixers. It really was, and I think that's why they weren't really chomping at the bit to give him an extension, and I think that made a difference.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be an odd fit for anybody because he's this player that demands to be the number one, but he's not
a number one guy.
He's not a number one guy. Like, he's not good enough to be a number one. He's good enough to be a defensive number one, but he's not going to put up the points that you want. He's averaging 7 and 7, which is big, but he's averaging 14 points a game, And like, if you look at his career, he's never averaged more than 20, like big time more than 20. Mm-hmm. He's just not the guy that I want to be my number one.
That's fair. I mean, if you could take Kyrie's talent and match it with Jimmy Butler's personality, you'd have something.
Yeah. So I lied. He did average more than 21. It was 21, 22, 23, but never like
nothing more. That seems like his ceiling.
That you want your number one guy to be averaging 25, right?
Yeah.
And even when he was averaging 24, like it was on 36% from the 3-point line, 86% from the 45-36. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Pedestrian. Nothing out of the water, not crazy efficient. What made him great was that he was a great lockdown defender,
Yeah.
So he's just not a player that I would want on my team.
Definitely. Well, I've been keeping an eye. The Celtics just actually tipped off a few minutes ago as we record this, but they're 4-1 off to a decent start. Kemba looks pretty comfortable. Kemba is still struggling to figure out that he doesn't have to be the defensive guy that he was in Charlotte as much, and he just needs to shoot. And it seems like he's getting there, but it's just taking some time to feel it. And the best thing I can say about the Celtics so far, man, is they feel like they're having fun playing ball. And this is what they were supposed to feel like whenever Kyrie was back and things were rolling. I don't know that it's going to work. I don't know that Enes Kanter being your number one at the 5 is going to be, your answer. But I think they're definitely going to need help down low eventually. But it seems like Juice is off to a really good start. It seems like Tatum's off to a decent start. I'm pretty encouraged by this team. I don't know what they're going to do yet, but I really like the Celtics so far.
I like him. I agree. Rolling out Kanter as your number one is trouble to me. And I'm the biggest Kanter fan in the world. Like he was the best. He averaged the most points in the history of OKC basketball as a 6-man coming off the bench. He almost averaged 20 points a game. Russ was saying he's the best 6-man in the league, but he just doesn't play defense, or he can't play defense because he's not crazy athletic. He's undersized and he's under length more than anything else. And he doesn't have super quick feet. So, he's a step back from Al Horford defensively. I wouldn't say offensively, although Horford's playing out of his mind in Philly. But I think that the fact that he has 2 grade A wing stoppers on the team is going to make up for that a little.
Yeah, Kyle and I were actually talking about this yesterday. I think that with the Al Horford thing, it's like it's kind of what we talked about in the offseason. It's going to suck with losing him production-wise this year, but 2 years from now, they're going to be really glad they didn't sign that contract.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I mean, you've got guys like Grant Williams that's stepping up. You've got, some good play from Carson Edwards early on. Like that's turning out to be a pretty good pick. I mean, you've got the actual offense running through Gordon Hayward. I think that's where the biggest disconnect with Kyrie is when Kyrie got back and you had Gordon Hayward on the court too, you have to run the offense through Gordon Hayward. And like with Kyrie, rightfully so, you got to run the offense through Kyrie. And like that's okay, yeah. But it got to be. It just wasn't
Brad Stevens.
100%. You said that all last year. It's not Brad Stevens' strong suit here. This isn't like a Mike D'Antoni situation where you can have 2 guys that need to have the ball in their hands on the court and be able to make that work. He's just not that kind of guy. So it was one of those things. I mean, it really could be a little bit of addition by subtraction, a little bit of Ewing theory here with that. I find that very, very interesting. And I find it also very interesting that Kyrie's saying the same shit right now in Brooklyn that he was saying in Boston a year ago. But that's, here nor there.
At this point, what does Kyrie's stock look like to you? So we're 5 games in. Everything that we say is like working on a very small sample size, right?
Absolutely.
What's Kyrie's stock to you at this point?
At this point, dude, you're going to see the exact same thing from him that you saw in Boston, where he's going to go through these moods. It's not a talent problem for Kyrie Irving. It's a mental thing. He doesn't know how to be a leader. He doesn't know how to be the guy that he wants to be. That's why I made the Jimmy Butler comment earlier that if you combined his tenacity and his wannabe leadership with Kyrie Irving's game, you've got a hell of a player, because I think he wants to be that guy. I don't think he has a clue how to be a leader though. And I mean, there's already been reports. I don't ever really want to doubt. Was it Ramona Shelburne that came out with that, or Doris Burke? I can't remember. One of the two said that he's basically already had a couple of meltdowns and that the team doesn't really know what to do with him.
That from a couple different sources.
Yeah, and like it's just one of those things where I think you're going to continue to see that stuff. And like I love it because they asked Kevin Durant. They were like, are you going to kind of try to help, kind of help him through, be the veteran, kind of help him through? And Kevin Durant was just like,
Yeah, KD was like, "Hold on, I gotta answer this Twitter troll really quick.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta pull up one of my burners."
But he was, it was basically a non-committal. Like, it's it's really one of those things where I think that he's gonna get in his own way here, and I don't know what it's gonna look like when Kevin Durant gets back. I really don't, but I I don't see Kyrie as that guy, man. It was the same story I think it was different when he played with LeBron in Cleveland, and then he went to Boston. He wanted to be the leader. He wanted to be the guy, and that's fine, but you got to step up into that. He didn't step up into that. And now he wanted to leave. Now he wants to go to Brooklyn and do the same thing where he wants to be the leader, wants to be the guy, and I can already guarantee you I know how this is going to end.
Yep. For me, so I'm gonna try this new ranking system, right?
Okay.
I think that there are a certain number of players in the league that can change a free agency. If they sign somewhere, millions of dominoes fall in different places than if they sign another place. Kyrie is no longer one of those players for me.
Agreed.
Kevin Durant's one of those players. LeBron James is still one of those players. Giannis is one of those players. Anthony Davis is one of those players. It's a short list. James Harden is probably one of those players.
Luka.
Steph Curry is definitely one of those players.
Luka.
That's.
I mean, so far.
Yeah, because he's young.
Exactly.
Just because he's young. Because he's young.
Not as proven yet, but I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. So Kyrie's not one of those players for me anymore.
And I think that's fair. I think he's earned that. Like that's. I don't think he sees it that way. I don't think he gets that. And I mean, you know me, like you know how I felt about this whole thing. It's infuriated me since it really all started, and he says the right things he wants to, but I don't know that he has the capacity to have that kind of light on him and back that up. And I hate that for Kyrie because he's incredibly talented. He's an incredibly gifted athlete, but I just don't see him be able to hold that up.
And I like the way that he interacts with reporters. I like that he's free and open and just talks. I love that. And I like that about Kevin Durant too, to be honest with you. There's not a whole lot I like about Kevin Durant, but I like that he will let you into his mind and talk to you. Not a whole lot of people do that in the NBA. And actually Iggy talks about that in his book. He says, you're so afraid to say anything and you just keep giving these little like one word quips. Hey, we got to execute better, because people take you out of context constantly. They're always looking for a story.
Always.
I like the guys that will open up. KD's one of them. Kyrie's one of them. LeBron kind of does it sometimes, but not always.
Whether he should or not is a different story.
Sure. I just like that stuff.
I'm with you.
Get as much of their personality as possible.
I do too, but I also like it also shows and illustrates that these guys know a lot about the game, and I think that's what impresses me about LeBron the most is that he knows his basketball IQ is just unstoppable. As soon as, I was saying earlier during the Mavs Lakers game, we were talking about whenever they took that to overtime, I was like, LeBron James going to win this game because he knows how to win. That's what it comes down to. It's experience, and it's also being probably the third, fourth best player of all time. But that's besides the point. I think I enjoy that too. I'm 100% with you. So I think the Nets are off to kind of a weird start, 3-4 so far. While Kyrie fits in, I don't know what the rest of the team looks like with him, and I think that was the difference between him and D'Angelo Russell. Is D'Angelo Russell didn't really command. I don't know. You were able to spread things out and do things a little bit more efficiently. And I mean, now it's kind of what we were talking about a minute ago. Get the ball in Kyrie's hands. Yeah,
anytime that you have a young guy, he's not going to demand the ball, right?
Yeah.
So there are times at the end of the game where D'Angelo might have demanded the ball, but he's also a peer with Karis LeVert and with Spencer Dinwiddie.
Right. Kyrie's
D'Angelo
a veteran.
Was their peer. Yeah, they don't think of Kyrie as a peer, right?
Right.
They think of him almost as a boss or a leader, right?
Yeah, I've seen it. So, I know how that goes.
Sometimes it's really great if you have a LeBron James who's a fantastic leader. It's not great when you have a Kyrie Irving who's not a good leader.
Yeah. I'm not exactly on the LeBron being a great leader train, but I get what you're saying for sure. Yeah, it can make a difference whenever it all comes down to it. Well,
your Celtics, by the way, have 6 players in double digits.
Yeah,
averaging double digits throughout the year.
Like I said, it's off to a nice start. I feel like it's getting there. It's going to take some time. They're going to have to figure out, what holes they've got. But I mean, as soon as they trade, a few picks for Karl Anthony Towns, you and I are going to be set. We're going to be excited.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say the time clock in Chicago might not be working. Having guys punch into a time clock in the locker room. It's a good football coach move. Don't know that it's a good basketball coach move.
That feels like a Ditka. I think he was talking to Ditka and got that idea.
Oh, it's such a great idea, though. I loved it. I told you I was all about it. Time clock. That's all you have to look at here.
Jeez, yeah.
But yeah, anything else in the East? Last take here before we wrap things up. How have you felt about the Bucks so far?
Dude, they're good. They're fantastic. I don't think they missed a step with Brogdon.
I think your biggest problem is the Lopez is that you can't play those guys in crunch time.
I would, especially Brook, because they play them differently, right? So the biggest problem is Budenholzer and his ability to play in a 7-game series. They're not going to have any problem with coming out of the East with probably the best record because Budenholzer is a regular season guy. What they'll have a problem with is if they play the Sixers in the playoffs. I don't know if they can beat the Sixers in a 7-game series because I've never seen anything from Budenholzer showing me that he can adjust, right?
Yeah.
He did it a little bit last year, but
yeah, that was our biggest complaint with him in the playoffs. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So like Giannis, by the way, had oh man, I have a stat. Hold up, listen to this. This is crazy. Where you at?
If it's an Antetokounmpo stat, it's got to be incredible.
Oh, it's great. What are you talking about?
I said if it's a Giannis stat, Antetokounmpo stat, it's got to be incredible.
It's incredible. In the first 6 games of the season, he totaled 160 points, 83 rebounds, and 46 assists. There's never been another NBA player that has totaled 150 points, 80 rebounds, and 40 assists in the first 6 games of the season.
That's absurd.
Dude, he's so good. There's so much talent in the league right now. He is undoubtedly a top 3 player. I think he's still the best player. I think he's the best player in the league.
So
I would take him probably more than over everybody else.
I'm inclined to agree with you. If if they flame out of the playoffs again, I mean, you got to think he's going to consider being out of there.
Yeah.
Dude, it's a shame too.
Yeah. He cares too much about winning. To be honest with you, I can't see him doing a KD where he's matching up with where he's texting all these other free agents and trying to go wherever they go, right? I think that he's going to be the guy that goes somewhere and then gets people put around him. Or maybe I can't see him joining another 73 win team.
But why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just stay in Milwaukee in that case?
Maybe if he believes that they can't attract free agents, right? There's a difference between going to a team that's already established and then going to a team and then being able to attract free agents to you.
But also,
it's your team and you're just bringing people in, right?
Sure, but if you say either you fire the GM, do whatever you got to do, or I'm leaving, if you don't listen to Giannis, you deserve to lose him.
Yeah.
I get what you're
agree
saying.
with that. I do think, though, a lot of people just don't want to play in Minneapolis.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure there. You said Minneapolis. I think you meant Milwaukee.
Yeah, I meant Milwaukee. Sorry.
Same thing. Same thing.
But that's also true, though. Concern for Giannis shooting 17% from the 3-point line this year.
Yeah, he'll clean it up.
Also overall, DiVincenzo, Sterling Brown is shooting 57% from the 3-point line. DiVincenzo is shooting 56. George Hill's shooting 500. Korver's shooting 46. Middleton shooting 41. Dude, that team is lighting it up from the 3-point line.
How the hell is Kyle Korver still playing basketball?
Because he's shooting 46% from the free throw line.
I know, but he's like father time. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's fair. And when Redick, dude, you just got to have a wet J and you can play for forever.
That's a good point. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. We want to remind everyone to follow us on social media. That's Sensibly Loud on Twitter and on Instagram. And make sure to follow us on Facebook as well at Sensibly Loud Media. And make sure to give us a call. We want to hear from the listeners. We want to hear some questions. We want to hear what you guys want us to talk about. So please give us a call. Remind everyone that number is 972-885-9361. And we will be back next week. See you, man.